The heat had been leaving the valley all afternoon. You could feel it rising from the blacktop in waves, a slow exhale that shimmered above the ground. The light was changing, not golden, not gone, just that hour between when the day stops burning and the night begins to breathe. The road cut through the fields like an old scar, cracked, faded, forgotten. Grass had begun to creep up through the edges, reclaiming what the tar had stolen decades ago. The air smelled of dust, oil, and sun-baked stone, and across that quiet strip of road, a snake began to move. She was small, thin as a belt, her scales dull brown except for the faint shimmer along her back, where the light caught them. She moved like something that had always known silence, each motion unhurried, perfect, inevitable. Her body slid across the warmth still trapped in the asphalt, soaking in the last memory of the sun. In the distance, a truck passed, too far to disturb her, but enough to send a low hum through the ground. The vibration rippled beneath her belly like a warning. She paused, tongue flicking the air, tasting the metal, the oil, the ghosts of 1,000 tires. Then she moved on. On the hill above the road, Eli Navarro leaned against the fence post outside his father's house, watching the fields fade into shadow. He'd been there since the light started to turn, that soft, amber half-light that made everything look like memory. The hum of insects rose and fell, like breathing. Somewhere behind him, an old radio played the same 3 notes of a song that had lost its words years ago. He spotted the movement first, a flicker against the road. Something alive. He squinted, shading his eyes even though the sun was almost gone. The shape slid across the center line, a thin, sinuous thread cutting through the gray. A snake. He watched it until it disappeared into the tall grass on the far side, the last few inches of its body vanishing like smoke. For a moment, he felt an ache. Not fear, not nostalgia. Something deeper. The kind of feeling that came when you saw something doing what it was meant to do, no matter how many years the world had tried to pave over it. Behind him, the screen door creaked. "You staring at nothing again?" a voice called. His sister, June, the last person left in the house besides him. Eli didn't look back. "Not nothing," he said. She stepped onto the porch, arms folded against the evening chill. "You think too much. That's your problem." "Maybe," he said, "but the road remembers things." She laughed quietly. "The road doesn't remember a damn thing, Eli. It barely holds together." He smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised." June sighed and went back inside, letting the screen slam behind her. The radio crackled, then fell silent. Eli stayed where he was, the last light catching on the wire fence, turning it silver for a heartbeat before it dimmed again. He looked back down at the road, empty now, but somehow not. He could still see the faint curve of the snake's path, the subtle impression her body had left in the thin dust that gathered at the edge of the asphalt. A mark so small it would be gone by morning. But for now, under the rising moon and the deepening blue of the sky, it looked eternal. He took a slow breath, tasting the heat that lingered, the scent of rain somewhere too far away to matter, and down below the road stretched into the dark, quiet, waiting, still holding the warmth of the day, like a memory it didn't want to let go of. The snake was gone, but her trail remained. Invisible, maybe, but there. And as the first stars came out, faint and trembling, the asphalt, black, cracked and alive in its own strange way, remembered. The next morning broke in silence, the kind that made sound itself hesitate. Mist clung to the fields, turning the world gray and soft-edged. The road lay empty again, but the air above it still shimmered faintly from the ghost of yesterday's heat. Eli Navarro was already awake. He'd been up before dawn, sitting on the porch with his boots unlaced, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. The house behind him was quiet, June still asleep, the radio dead, the world holding still around him. He looked down toward the road, the same road, always the same. He could see the faint curve of it through the mist, vanishing into the low hills beyond the cottonwood trees. It looked peaceful, but Eli knew better. He'd spent his whole life beside it, fixing it, patching it, cursing it. His father had laid half of it by hand when the county still believed this stretch mattered. Back then it was new, smooth, promising. Now it was cracked and tired, like everything else that stayed too long under the same sun. He stood, stretched, and made his way down the hill, the damp grass brushing against his jeans. The air smelled of oil and soil and the faint sweetness of clover. When he reached the edge of the asphalt, he stopped. There, near the center line, was the faintest trace of movement, a dark line across the dust, where the snake had crossed the night before. The rain that should have washed it away hadn't come. He crouched down, running a calloused finger along the mark. It was almost gone, but not yet. The smallest things lasted longer than people expected. He looked toward the horizon, the sun rising slow behind thin clouds. Its light turned the mist gold for a heartbeat, before fading into dull gray. The road caught it, glinting in patches, where the tar still held smooth. A sound broke the quiet, the low rumble of an engine, distant but growing. Eli stood, stepped back onto the shoulder, and watched as a white sedan came into view, its headlights cutting through the fog even though it wasn't needed. The car slowed as it neared him, tires whispering against the wet pavement. It stopped. The driver's window rolled down with a low whine. It was Sheriff Danner, hat tilted, eyes tired. "Mornin', Eli." Eli nodded. "Mornin', Sheriff. You seen anything strange last night?" Eli frowned. "Define strange." The sheriff rubbed a hand across his jaw. "Old Miss Keller swears she saw lights down by the fields. Said they moved slow, like someone walking with a lantern." Eli looked back toward the road. "Could have been a truck," he said. "She says it wasn't. Says she heard something, too. Like hissing." Eli almost smiled. "Probably whined through the grass. Wind don't leave tracks." That made him pause. "Tracks?" The sheriff pointed. "There. You were staring at him when I pulled up, weren't you?" Eli glanced down. The faint line in the dust looked darker now, somehow deeper. The mist had thickened around it, blurring its edges but not erasing it. "Just a snake," Eli said finally. Danner nodded slowly. "Could be. But folks around here have been talking. They say the ground out here's changing, shifting under the road, some kind of movement at night." Eli gave a short laugh. "You mean the world's still turning? That's not new." The sheriff didn't smile. "You be careful, Eli. Sometimes things remember more than they should." He rolled the window up and drove off, the sound of his engine fading into the mist. Eli stood there long after he was gone. The wind moved faintly, stirring the grass at the edges of the ditch. He looked down again. The mark was still there, and for a moment he thought he saw it glisten, not with moisture, but with heat, like the road was breathing again. He reached out, touched the spot where the snake had passed. It was warm. The morning had no right to feel that warm. He drew his hand back, flexed his fingers. They smelled faintly of tar and something metallic, like blood or maybe memory. The mist began to lift, pulling back toward the fields. The sun rose higher, pale and merciless. The road looked ordinary again, silent and still. Eli turned to go, but when he reached the fence at the hill, he stopped. From the corner of his eye, he thought he saw something. A flicker of movement, just at the bend where the road disappeared. A shimmer, almost like heat mirage. He blinked, but it was gone. Still, when he looked down at the asphalt again, the faint line across it seemed a little darker than before, as if the road itself had started to remember not just the shape of what had crossed it, but the moment, too. Eli whispered, "You were right, Dad. The ground keeps its own stories." The wind carried his words down the empty road, where they vanished into the hum of distance, leaving only the faint echo of something warm, alive and moving just beneath the surface. By the third day, the heat had returned, heavier than before. The kind of heat that flattened sound, dulled thought, and made the horizon shimmer like it was trying to slip away. The road looked alive under it, a long black mirror that bent and quivered in the sun. Eli Navarro stood by his truck on the shoulder, hat in his hand, sweat darkening the back of his shirt. He'd spent the morning patching a crack that had split straight through the center line overnight. By noon, it had opened again, a jagged seam of raw, soft tar that looked almost wet. He squatted beside it, running his fingers over the edge. The heat stung. The ground was breathing again, slow, uneven, faintly pulsing. He told himself it was just trapped air, the kind that builds up when the asphalt softens. But deep down, he didn't believe it. June came down the hill carrying a jug of water, her face pink from the walk. "You been out here since dawn?" He didn't answer. She set the jug down beside him. "You'll bake yourself before you fix anything." Eli looked up, squinting against the glare. "You hear that?" "Hear what?" He pointed down. "Listen close." June frowned, crouched beside him. The sound was faint, barely there. A low, dry rasp beneath the road. Not wind, not movement. Something else. She pulled back. "What is that?" Eli stood slowly, brushing the grit from his hands. "Something moving," he said. "Underneath." June laughed, but it came out nervous. "You sound like Miss Keller now." He smiled faintly. Maybe she wasn't wrong. They stood there a long moment, the heat pressing down like a hand. The air shimmered. A single grasshopper clicked past, landing on the edge of the asphalt, where it froze, too hot to move. The sound came again, clearer now, the same soft rasp that snakes make when sliding through dry grass. June took a step back. "It's not possible. That road's solid." Eli looked down at the crack. "Solid things remember too." She shook her head, started up the hill. "You need rest." He watched her go, then crouched again. The crack had widened, only slightly, but enough to see the darker layer beneath the surface. The older tar, the foundation poured when his father had worked this stretch. It looked almost liquid now, shimmering faintly as if it held light. He leaned closer. For a moment, he thought he saw movement. A glimmer inside, like something long and narrow passing through a current. Then it was gone. He sat back hard, heartbeat loud in his ears. The air smelled different now. Not oil or heat, but something organic, like dry leaves and earth after rain. He stood, looked down the road. The shimmer along the center line wasn't sunlight anymore. It pulsed, faintly rhythmic. A car appeared in the distance, a pale blue sedan, tires hissing on the hot pavement. Eli stepped aside, watching as it passed. The driver didn't look at him. The car moved fast, but as it crossed the patch where the crack had opened, the tires seemed to sink, just a fraction of an inch, and then bounce back up, leaving behind a faint print, as if the road had softened to remember the weight. Eli walked to where it had passed. The prints were already fading, but not gone. He touched one, then drew his hand back sharply. Warm. Too warm. He turned toward the house, the shimmer of heat bending it out of shape. June stood in the doorway, arms crossed. From this distance, she looked like a shadow painted on the air. He shouted, "June, stay inside tonight." "Why?" He hesitated. The truth sounded foolish, even to him. "Ground's moving strange." She laughed, waving him off. "You're seeing things again." Maybe she was right. Maybe the heat had gotten to him. But as he looked back at the road, he saw it again. A ripple that started at the far bend and crawled toward him, slow and deliberate, like something beneath the surface was breathing, pushing, waiting. He stepped back, boots crunching against the gravel. The ripple stopped. The world went silent. No birds, no wind, no sound at all. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, from deep below, came the hiss. Long, slow, patient. It moved under the asphalt, tracing the same invisible path the snake had taken 3 days before. Eli whispered, "You came back." The sound paused, as if listening, then slipped away, fading into the distance. He stood there until the heat blurred everything into one endless, trembling shape. Road, horizon, sky, all of it the same color, all of it alive. When he finally turned back toward the house, the ground beneath his boots was still warm, soft, and faintly trembling, like something underneath had stirred and remembered the way home. That night, the air refused to cool. The heat stayed trapped beneath the sky, pressing down on the valley like a lid. The cicadas had stopped hours ago, and even the crickets were silent. The only sound was the low hum of the power lines, vibrating faintly against the dark. Eli couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch with a lantern at his feet, the faint yellow glow stretching across the dirt like a thin, tired halo. June had gone to bed hours ago. The house was quiet except for the slow ticking of the ceiling fan and the occasional creak of wood expanding in the heat. Down the hill, the road glowed faintly under the moonlight. Smooth, silver gray, almost soft-looking. Every now and then a shimmer crossed its surface, like the afterimage of a breeze. But there was no breeze. There hadn't been for days. Eli sipped from a glass of warm water and stared. "You're still moving," he whispered. The road didn't answer, but he felt something in his chest tighten, a pressure that made him think of breathing beneath weight, of something buried and restless. He set the glass down, stood, and started down the hill. The air thickened as he walked, carrying with it the smell of tar and something faintly metallic. His boots stuck slightly with each step, the heat rising even through the night. When he reached the edge of the asphalt, he stopped. The road was alive with light. Not bright, but subtle. A faint pulse that moved along the cracks like veins under skin. The shimmer ran from one end of the valley to the other, slow and deliberate. He crouched, hand hovering over the surface. The warmth met him before he touched it. Beneath that warmth was another feeling. Movement. The same slow rhythm he'd felt days ago, steady and patient, like the heartbeat of something too big to see. "All right," he said softly. "You win. I believe you." The air trembled. Somewhere behind him, the screen door creaked. "Eli?" June's voice on low, half asleep, uneasy. He didn't turn. "Go back inside." "What are you doing?" "Listening." June took a few steps down the hill. "It's too hot out here. You're going to make yourself sick." He finally turned, his face pale in the lantern light. "It's under us," he said, still moving, like it's trying to remember the shape it used to be. June frowned. "You mean the snake?" Eli nodded. "Maybe not the one we saw, maybe older. Maybe something the road's been holding on to." "Eli, it's just heat. Roads shift. You know that." He almost laughed. "Then tell me why it's breathing." She opened her mouth to answer, and then stopped. The sound came again. Not a hiss this time. A low, steady exhale from beneath the asphalt, so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself. The ground under their feet vibrated, just enough to make the gravel rattle. June whispered, "What is that?" Eli didn't move. "It's remembering." The sound grew, not louder, but clearer, a rhythm that matched their pulse. The cracks in the road widened, light leaking through them like molten glass. It wasn't bright enough to hurt, just enough to make the night look fragile. Eli stepped closer. "You've been under there the whole time, haven't you?" The ground answered with another tremor, slower this time. The faint pulse moved away from him, down the center line toward the horizon. He watched it go, the glow fading with distance. Then silence. The heat broke first. A single gust of wind swept through the valley, cool and sharp, lifting the dust in small spirals. The air smelled like stone after rain. June let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "It's gone." Eli shook his head. "No, it just finished remembering." They stood there together as the night shifted around them, the first wind in days brushing against the grass, the insects slowly starting their songs again. The moonlight turned the road silver, smooth, still. But when Eli knelt and pressed his hand to the surface, it was no longer hot. It was warm in a different way, soft, alive, like flesh beneath skin. He pulled his hand back, and when he looked at his palm, it was marked with a faint pattern, a scale's imprint, perfect and small. He smiled. "Guess you left your name behind." June didn't answer. She was looking at the horizon, where the faintest streak of lightning flickered in the clouds, not from a storm, but from something shifting deep in the distance. The wind picked up again. The first drops of rain began to fall, thin, hesitant, but real. Eli looked up at the clouds, then down at the road. The surface glistened, rain pooling in the cracks like veins, lighting up once more. The air cooled, and for the first time in weeks, the valley breathed easy. June whispered, "Maybe it's over." Eli shook his head. "Maybe it's just begun." The rain thickened, pattering against the asphalt in a steady rhythm. Each drop hit with a faint hiss, like memory finding its place again. And as the road shimmered beneath the falling water, the marks began to fade, not gone, just sinking back into the black. The snake had crossed. The road had remembered. And now, at last, so did the earth.